Hey guys, and welcome back to Mad About Skin. Korean skincare really is in crisis mode right now. For the past 5 years, Korean skincare brands have held a dominant and ever-increasing position in terms of Western skincare routines. However, over the past 12 months, sales have started to stagnate and more recently fallen for the first time in living memory. And I think a lot of this is being driven by a series of scandals and issues which have emerged from the Korean skincare market. In today's video, I want to talk about all of that in more detail. What are these issues? What are these scandals? And why has it led to people's opinions of Korean skincare souring and those sales falling? Sit back, relax, let's talk the ongoing Korean skincare crisis. Now, in today's video, I'm going to share with you my hot take on this, but I'd love to know your own perspectives. Do you think there's more to it than this? Is there anything else that you think is feeding into this slowdown in terms of sales of Korean skincare? Let me know by reaching down into the comments section below, because I would obviously love to hear from you guys. Now, whilst we're talking about some of the issues in terms of the Korean skincare market, don't believe that I've suddenly gone off Korean skincare. I love Korean skincare. I love the formulas, I love the accessible price points, but I really do think it's important that we talk about these topics so that you guys can make the right decisions when it comes to your own skincare routines. So if you appreciate this style of content where we do a bit more of a deep dive into some of the goings on in the skincare industry, make sure to let me know by reaching down and giving the video a big thumbs up and a like. The more likes a video gets, the more likely I am to replicate that in terms of future filming, because I obviously want to create the content that you guys most enjoy consuming. Now, with all that out of the way, let's cut that waffle and delve straight on in. So according to some industry analysis, sales of Korean skincare in Western countries has actually declined by 4.5% over the course of 2026. Now, 4.5% isn't, anything earth-shattering, but it's definitely halted a consistent increase in sales year on year that we've seen for the past 5 or 6 years. And I think that's why it really stands out. Now, as with anything, Korean skincare was going from strength to strength to strength, and that had to stop at some point. But I think seeing a decline in sales is what really shocked people, and I've seen a lot of conversation online about what could be causing this and driving it. Now, I, as I said, still love Korean skincare. I'd say Korean products probably make up around 40% of my whole skincare collection. I'm dedicated to it, and if you want to see my latest Korean skincare favorites video, I'm going to dig that out and I'll leave a link to it up there. Definitely one to check out. But I have started to look again at some of the practices in terms of the Korean skincare market, some of the marketing, and some of the issues which have emerged have definitely put a little bit of a dampener on my love affair with K skincare. So I thought it's worth talking about now. I think the biggest issue, or certainly the most recent one, is what we're calling the Anua Azelaic Acid scandal. Now, this is picking up a lot of traction over on other social media platforms, but people are talking about it here on YouTube too. What this is one of the most popular Korean skincare brands, Anua, and their most popular product, their Azelaic Acid 10%, went through a cheeky reformulation around 6 months ago. They didn't advertise this. They didn't really make a big thing of it. They just reformulated and fundamentally changed the entire product without letting people know. They took the azelaic acid, which was previously in pure form, and changed it to an azelaic acid salt. Now, whilst this will deliver some benefits in the salt form in terms of calming and soothing, it has very little impact when it comes to fading hyperpigmentation and helping even out the skin tone, which is the main reason most people reach for an azelaic acid serum. This doesn't mean that there isn't a 10% azelaic acid in this, but the change in form of azelaic acid is going to make it a lot less bioavailable and a lot less effective than the original formulation. They didn't announce this. They didn't really make anything. It was only the keen eye of one cosmetic formulator over on Instagram, I believe, that spotted this, called it out, and then the whole thing started to unravel. It turns out that quite a few Korean brands had done the exact same thing at around the same time. Most of these brands are actually all formulated in some really big factories, which will deal with various different brands. And so when one switches, most will also switch at the same time, and very few brands had actually declared this. So whilst on the face of it everything was the same, people were getting far less in terms of efficacy and results from the azelaic acids than they were before. Not okay. I hate it when brands reformulate without telling us, but usually it's a small tweak or a change. This was a wholesale change, which was actually going to have a significant impact on the performance of the product. People had a right to know. And this, I think, really snowballed because people started talking about other reformulations that happened in terms of Korean skincare. Now, Korean skincare brands will generally reformulate products way more frequently than Western brands do. That's just a cultural thing where it's more expected from Korean consumers that will happen, so brands feel freer to do it, whereas here in the West, generally brands will hold off reformulating unless there's a real reason to do so. Maybe we don't understand this shift in cultural mentality when it comes to reformulations and how they're judged. And fundamentally, Anua is designed for the Korean skincare market, not exclusively for the West. So there is a little bit of that needs to be understood. But fundamentally, this got a lot of people talking because they realized that actually they were buying a product which they'd previously loved, but was now just not delivering the same results. This then, as I said, snowballed and people started to look at other reformulations and realizing, yeah, there've been, in the words of one content creator, a cheapening of the quality of Korean skincare products without people actually realizing. Once trust is lost, and I think this has really taken a hammer blow to trust in Korean formulas, it's really hard to win back. And I think this has really created a situation where a lot of people feel they have less trust and faith in Korean skincare brands and Korean skincare products than they used to. Anua should definitely have done better. If they wanted to make this switch, they should have advertised it. Personally, they should have just left the product alone, if you ask me, but they likely had their reasons. But the underhand way it was dealt with, and then realizing it was a much bigger issue than just Anua as a brand, I think has really left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. When it comes to azelaic acid, the best form is pure form azelaic acid, or a derivative form known as PAD. PAD is a fantastic derivative, great if you have sensitive skin, but still is clinically proven to deliver results. The azelaic acid salts that were used in the Anua serum have no data behind them, and there is a lot of question marks around it's ever going to perform the same way the original form of azelaic acid would. So yeah, this a firm pass for me. I should say I covered this in a separate video, which I will dig out and leave a link to up there. If you did want to explore it in more detail, definitely check that video out where we look at some really good azelaic acids and compare them to some of the slightly lower standard and, in my opinion, slightly shady ones that exist on the market. Now, up next, we have something which people are referring to as the Korean sunscreen scandal Part 2. Now, you probably remember the original sunscreen scandal, which I think emerged around 6 years ago, which is where some of the biggest Korean sunscreen brands weren't actually delivering the SPF that they were advertising on their product. That was a whole thing which was covered extensively. However, most of the Korean brands actually recovered from that quite well. They really doubled down on testing, reconfirming things, was fully transparent with all of their testing and their data, which meant that they could recover that trust relatively quickly. And Korean sunscreens rebounded and went from strength to strength to strength. However, they've taken another hit over the past 12 months. It's actually as a result of formulas which were created and only ever intended for the US market. So most people are aware that the US has some very outdated sunscreen regulations. They haven't really updated any of their sunscreen laws for around 20 years, meaning a lot of the new generation really effective sunscreens that we see here in Europe, you might see in Korea, Australasia, other parts of the world just aren't accessible to be sold in retail stores in the US. Now, Korean sunscreen brands obviously want to be able to sell into the huge skincare market that is the US. So they kind of did a workaround, and what they decided to do was create formulas which are specific for the US market, which conform with the outdated US regulations. These formulas were far thicker than traditional Korean sunscreens, generally had lower UVA protection than what you traditionally see with newer generation filters, and often had a higher irritation profile, stinging the eyes, and just feeling a little uncomfortable on the skin. Now, this was designed only and exclusively for the US consumer. But the reason that things became a little bit problematic is they decided to keep the packaging the same. So on the face of it, you have two identical sunscreens, one with new generation filters designed for the European, the Korean and the Australasian market. Then you have another product which has the exact same imagery, the exact same packaging, but is designed for the US market and uses old style US approved filters. Two totally different products, but on the face of it look the same. Now, the problems really hit is a lot of the big online retailers of Korean skincare got their stock mixed up. And so they were just sending out any sunscreen to any market. So some people in the US ended up with the European, Korean and Australasian formulas, which they weren't mad about because they're the better formulas. However, some European consumers ended up with the US version of the sunscreen and realized this isn't good. This is thick, heavy, stinging the eyes, not feeling great on application, and were really, really disappointed. again, this just eroded the trust that had been built up again since the first sunscreen scandal. People have started saying, look, if we don't know what product we're actually going to get, we don't know what we're paying for, then we're out. We don't want to invest in a Korean sunscreen that we don't really know what we're going to be getting. At the end of the day, if you're watching this from Europe, if you're watching this from Korea, from Australasia, you're going to want the newer generation version. It's what we're used to, what delivers far better experience and protection. That's what we want. And the fact that we don't know what we're buying really is a whole problem in of itself. And so a lot of people have actually started to stop spending their money on Korean sunscreens, are looking to European, Australian, or other countries' sunscreens in order to plug that gap. So a lot of this decline in sales that's been seen in the Korean skincare market is actually sunscreens. I think the Korean brands have played themselves in being really hungry to access that US sunscreen market. They've ended up damaging their reputation internationally. And as a result, Korean sunscreen sales have suffered. And I think it's going to be really difficult for them to actually win this back and get over this. Now, some people will say the Korean sunscreen brands aren't actually to blame for this. It's rather the big retailers that just didn't have their own stock control, didn't know how to differentiate between the European and the US versions of these sunscreens. And I would agree with that. But I also think Korean sunscreen brands could have done more to differentiate in terms of the packaging and make this easier for people. We have a right to know what we're buying and what we're putting on our skin, and this definitely kind of took the shine off a lot of the hype that was going around in terms of Korean sunscreens. Last but by no means least, let's talk about overhyped expectations versus actual delivery. This again might not be an issue with the individual Korean brands, but more the way that their products are marketed and sold. Korean skincare here in the West is really sold based on virality. Every brand wants to have that viral moment, have that product that becomes a sensation and sells millions of units in that short time frame. And the way that they do this is by overhyping the expectations and getting content creators and influencers to hype up a product and saying this is an absolute must for your skincare routine, look how amazing it is. We saw it with the Dr. Malaxin like under eye stick, which honestly, everyone's now telling the truth and saying, yeah, it was greasy, it wasn't really doing a whole lot, but they sold over 1 million units based on hype, which was never matched by the actual results that people saw. You see this with a lot of Medicube products. Medicube is a huge viral Korean skincare brand right now. People are singing its praises, saying how amazing their products are. But there's also an undercurrent of people there saying, yeah, they're not actually as great as people say. They're fine. There's nothing wrong with the products, but they're not as amazing as people say that they are. And the problem here is when you set your expectations up here, but you're delivering results down here, that gap is what destroys trust and destroys people's faith in Korean skincare and the way that things are being marketed. Now, again, I don't think this is necessarily all down to the Korean skincare brands themselves, and some brands can't dictate which of their products go viral. Take Dr. Malaxin, for example, a fantastic Korean skincare brand. Their like calcium stick went viral, and I would say is probably my least favorite of all their products, the one that delivers the least in terms of results. Their Semen Ray under eye cream is one of my personal favorites. That's the product that should have gone viral because it's genuinely phenomenal. One of the best under eye treatments you are ever going to use. In fact, I'm going to leave a link to it if you haven't checked it out. One of my absolute favorites. But that didn't go viral. Their calcium balm did, which honestly was just not it when it came to performance. And so I think a lot of this is Korean skincare brands are known for churning out multiple products. It's almost like a production line of new products, hoping that one of them will go viral. They can't really dictate which does. And so often it's a case of the least well performing of the products that goes viral, and that misalignment between expectations and delivery has damaged people's confidence in Korean skincare in the long term, and I think that's having a huge impact and driving some of the backlash that we're seeing today. So what do you think, guys? These are three incidences that I think could be driving some of this decline and this slowdown in Korean skincare sales. Do you agree with these? Do you think this is the fault of the Korean skincare brands or the way things are sold and marketed online? Who's to blame for some of this? Share your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. As I said, this isn't a video designed to say to people, yeah, we should stop buying Korean skincare. Korean skincare is still going strong in my own routine and will be for the foreseeable future. But I think it's worth calling calling these things out so that we're aware of them and we can factor these things into our own purchasing decisions. So if you watched it this far through to the bitter end, I just want to say thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, because you guys that watch through to the end of all my videos honestly mean the world to me. So thank you so much. If you could drop the Korean flag emoji down in the comments so that I can thank you personally for being here to the end, honestly, it would mean the world to me. And wherever you are in the world, guys, stay safe, stay well, and love your skin. Take care. Bye.